According to Time magazine, there has been a steady increase in the unemployment rate of college graduates over the last 10 years from 41% in 2002 to 53% in 2012. But wait, what could be causing so many college graduates to be unemployed? The answer is a suffering economy and lowering GDP. For those who don't know, the GDP, or gross domestic product, is a primary indicator of whether or not the economy is healthy. As you can see in the graph, the US is projected to have a lower GDP in the 2013 year, meaning the economy is going to retract, making it harder to find jobs. But why should you care? Well, we are all going to be going off to college and graduating into the working world sooner than you think, and we're going to be needing those jobs that might not be there. So how can the nation fix this? Well, if you look at the second picture, you can see the estimated total volume of the marijuana market last year. Now, what if that $76 billion and growing industry became an income source? Think about how that money could be used to create jobs for you and me, boost the economy, raise the GDP, and fund underfunded federal programs like, say, education. But the question becomes, how can the US access this massive market and put the money to good productive use? Put simply, the US has to legalize marijuana. Marijuana is a recreational drug used by many people around the globe. In the past 50 years, many countries have taken a stand against marijuana and have deemed it illegal. The Drug Enforcement Administration of the U.S. and the International War on Drugs are measures taken to eradicate marijuana as well as other drugs, thereby preventing public use. Because of the illegalization, crime rates have soared and the illegal drug trade has become much more widespread and profitable. So far, Colorado and Washington are the only places in the U.S. to legalize marijuana. However, many are still skeptical about the legalization of marijuana. Now, legalizing marijuana would provide two key economic benefits. First, governments would receive large amounts of tax revenues. And second, governments would recover money being currently wasted on marijuana-related expenditures. My first support is that billions of taxpayer dollars are currently being wasted on marijuana-related expenditures. Contrary to the point of these expenses, a study done by the United Nations estimates that marijuana-specific trafficking into the U.S. has increased by 20% over the last 40 years. An assessment of the amount of money spent on marijuana prohibition done by Forbes reports that $41.8 billion could be saved and redirected elsewhere in the U.S. budget, and another $1 billion in the U.S. would be saved by releasing those convicted of marijuana-related offenses. Now I'm going to be negating the two counterpoints against my argument about the legalization of marijuana. Counterpoint! The first counterpoint I'm going to be negating is the counterpoint that marijuana is a gateway drug. But I'm here to tell you that marijuana is not a gateway drug, and it is incorrect to try and correlate people's use of marijuana to people's use of other harder drugs. The simplest refutation of the gateway theory is the basic fact that most marijuana users just don't use other drugs. As the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration reports, more than 100 million Americans have tried marijuana, and 14.4 million Americans are estimated to be past month users. Yet there are only estimated 2,075,000 past month users of cocaine, and 153,000 past month users of heroin. Based on these numbers, it's clear that most marijuana users don't progress to harder drugs. A new developing theory, which is becoming more widely known and accepted, is known as the common liability model. It states that the likelihood that someone will transition to the use of a harder drug is determined not by the preceding use of a particular drug, but instead by the user's individual tendencies and environmental circumstances. The fact of the matter is, marijuana is the most common and easily obtained drug. I mean, it's not surprising that most people who've used harder drugs have tried marijuana first. The second counterpoint I'm going to be debating is that marijuana is a dangerous drug, and I'm here to tell you that marijuana is not a dangerous drug. In England and Wales, where an alcohol, drugs, and tobacco study was conducted, cannabis was said to have helped cause 17 deaths compared to 6,627 for alcohol and 86,500 for tobacco. It's ridiculous that these more dangerous and impairing drugs are legal and marijuana is illegal. Plus, there's been no significant evidence to suggest that marijuana users have had long-term physical or mental impairments. My second support is that governments would receive large amounts of tax revenues by legalizing marijuana and selling it to certified vendors. The most widely accepted and proposed plan for a taxing system mirrors the system set up for alcohol and cigarettes. A study done by Cato estimates that with the new system in place, tax revenues in the U.S. can range anywhere from $40 to $100 billion a year. The newly received tax revenues could be redirected to other underfunded programs of the federal government, such as education, transportation, and drug rehab centers. Now it's time to wrap up my presentation with my conclusion. Marijuana would provide a much-needed economical boost to nations like the U.S. in this time of economical distress. Legalizing marijuana would provide funds from tax revenues, and it would allow for the recovery of wasted funds spent on marijuana prohibition. Furthermore, marijuana is not a dangerous drug and is not a gateway drug. A total of $142.8 billion could be available in the U.S. alone through the legalization of marijuana. Globally, legalizing marijuana would boost many struggling economies and would help raise many GDPs, which in turn may create jobs for college graduates. To be conclusive, there are so many more benefits to the legalization of marijuana, so nations should legalize marijuana and stop the pointless prohibition. Thank you.